no, I'm late. Good thing I sleep fully clothed in jeans. I do this in my own home. Where am I going? Well, what are you doing? Filming the new video. No, I'm the guy that films new videos. Oh no. They didn't tell you? The bosses want to take the show in another direction. They're going to remake it. I'm the new host, Backwards Goblin. What? Backwards Goblin. It's like Blaster Goblin, backwards, a backwards shirt, backwards pants. And it's funny, it's going to try to help us get a younger audience. Who? The bosses with the ears and the blue stick. And you're watching, you know what I'm talking about. Bosses. You mean don't say it. Don't say it. Just get out of here. What video are you even remaking? Best feat in video games? That's not even a topic I did. Yeah, it's a remake. New host, new topics. Remake. No, that would be a reboot. A remake would be the same topics done differently. What now? Why don't you just go sit down over here and I'll explain. Yeah, why not?
Remakes versus remasters. It's time we finally talked about it because no one else is making the decision. So I guess it's my job. Every year a couple 20 of these get announced, and then we have to have that conversation of, is it a remake or like a remake? And don't even get me started on remasters, sequels, reboots. You know what? Throw upres and port in there while we're at it. There's just too many different kinds of releases for the exact same game. I find it strange that the games industry has had no real specific criteria for the difference between a remake and a remaster, which is something that is very cut and dry in most other media. For movies, a remaster will always be just a better looking version of the same thing. You like Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds? Now it's in 4K. How did we make something that was filmed on a camera the size of a U-Haul truck with the visual fidelity of an early Xbox Live Minecraft ripoff 4K? Nobody really knows. It defies all logic, but we do it. It's pretty sick. And a remake will always be a slightly different story with different actors and 90% of the time a different good, and that's the not kind. Now, I've been sitting on this idea for a long time, nearly 3 years, and it spawned from a conversation with a friend who made just a complete ass out of himself. The debate started when I referred to the 2020 release of Destroy All Humans as a remaster instead of a remake, even if that is what it says on the box. It is factually incorrect. And I'm going to give you my answers as to why I'm right and the definition of these and all other types of game version releases in a minute. But first, I'm going to time travel back to this 2023 conversation and use my friend as a punching bag because I have a public platform where he can't fight back. And if I've learned anything from my multiple decades on the internet, that right there is the best way to win an argument. His argument was, anytime you alter the game's code, it becomes a remake. He said, and I quote, "I will die on this hill." So now, is he not only an ass, but also dead and wrong? He's dead ass wrong. Literally every game would become a remake at that point. You need to alter code between two consoles to update button prompts. And say we're not getting that literal with it. If you upres a texture, the game is then calling a new version of that texture, which is once again an alteration of code. Destroy All Humans 2020 is a remaster. It used the same voice lines, levels, and story to redo the game the same way, but better looking. I know they also restored a cut level or something in there, but that's a whole can of worms we'll figure out later. Everything else firmly plants this into the remaster camp. So pitch your tent, we're at the remaster camp. Now hear me out, and let's say that Vince Vaughn came in and replaced all of Crypto's voice lines. Then I guess you could technically say it was a remake, but nobody really does a shot-for-shot remake like that with different actors, except for that one time that Vince Vaughn did it with Psycho. But Vince Vaughn rocks. Do you remember Brawl in Cell Block 99? Let's just let that guy do whatever he wants. It doesn't matter what the titling is. So how do we get to the bottom of this so that developers can learn how to title their games? Well, what would be the simplest and most obvious explanation would be to make a list of criteria and then hide it in a YouTube video that only 4 people and my grandma will watch. And to start this list, we can't just copy movies and music because games are so uniquely complicated. They are literally the only form of media that requires you to buy a brand-specific hardware to consume that media. And for some reason, we're just like all okay with that. And even if we say we don't, we definitely all pick a side, either Team Green or Team Blue. While we're all simultaneously agreeing that Team Red is pretty cool, but we wouldn't be caught dead claiming it's number one because it's kind of for babies. Or you like Nintendo, you need a little diaper change, you need your baba filled, you got goldfish dust all over your fingers and you want to rub it all over my couch. So that last one's a little personal. So with assistance from unpaid producer Ryan, who did a whole bunch of research into this topic in his free time and then just sent me the whole list of information when I told him I was doing this topic. So it's mostly his work that I'm going to butcher up and change it to something else. He built a whole list to specify how games should be labeled and broke it down into 4 categories. But I didn't necessarily agree with his categorization because he isn't really a modern video gamist. So I took his list and then I gave it a 2020 facelift, if you will. So we're going to start with the simplest and most boring, just to get it out of the way, and that is the port. This is like term number 2 that you learn when you decide you're going to be a gamer. This is just putting a game on another console. Resident Evil 4, only on GameCube. Fat chance they put this on literally everything, including an iPod Touch. Port is the most common. You swap your button prompts, maybe add a new mode for the new consoles or a special character. And look at you, Mr. Game Developer, you got yourself another 50, 60... $80. Cue the Roblox oof noise. That was most certainly not the Roblox oof noise. Are we good here? We ready to move on out of this one? There's not a whole lot I can really say on it. The next category is one I would say we also have pretty much down, and that would be the upgrade, or as it was known in the previous generation, the definitive edition. This happens a lot and it kind of changes names every few generations. It's just the new version of an old thing that looks a little better and plays a little better. Back when these were called definitive editions, you paid full retail price. Again, Roblox oof. That's still not right. Definitely not right. But you get a graphical upgrade for the new generation along with all the DLC that released for that game in its original run. Pretty sweet deal, right? But now in the newest generation of consoles that are borderline the exact same as the old one but a little bit faster, they can't really get away with that anymore. So instead we call them upgrades. And sometimes they're free, but most of the time they're like $5 if you already own the game, because CEOs need to eat too. If you're cold, they're cold. Take your CEO inside. Honestly, I like this model the best. This is the Hannah Montana option. You can buy the whole thing outright with all of the DLC definitive edition style if you have never owned it. But if you did already own it, then you just drop a few extra bucks or rarely get that free upgrade. I'm going to give them the credit. They did it like 2 times. And that's a lot in the games industry. And you get yourself like a nice little frame rate boost. I think these 2 categories are pretty much universally agreed on. You get the same game, maybe with some extra bells and whistles that looks a little nicer and runs a little better on the newer generation of consoles for the upgrade or the definitive edition. Okay, cool. Now let's move on to the stuff that people will try to argue with. But remember, I have the microphone, and I grew up in churches, so I was trained at a young age to defend my opinion regardless of facts. Okay? All right. The Remaster covers a wide variety of games. Everything from updates to textures and lighting, to full-on from-the-ground-up overhauls, as long as the game itself, the story, and the levels stay in their original arrangement. I would say these require a full new retail release for capitalism purposes, of course. So let's dive back into the Destroy All Humans example. You know, the one I used at the top. I promise I have others, but it's a good gray area to explain the differences. It has the same story, same levels, same voiceover lines, and the name. All of that is the same, whether you're playing on the PlayStation 2 version or the PlayStation 5 version. It is still Destroy All Humans. Sure, this one has been rebuilt from the ground up with a whole new physics engine, but they threw in an old cut level. If this were a DVD or a CD, that would be a remaster, and it would include a special feature of the extra level or maybe a bonus track. That doesn't make it a remake. Modernization is not remaking it, it's remastering it. Adding in an extra piece of content doesn't make it a remake either. There were ports from the GameCube to the PS2 that added in new modes, such as Resident Evil 4 that came with the all-new Separate Ways mode. It was a port from the GameCube to the PlayStation 2 that added in content. That port also looked a little better and ran a little better, but it's still a port, and I think I just hammered my point in way too hard there. But despite all that, for some reason, Destroy All Humans is marketed as a remake, and it makes no sense because it is borderline the same concept as the Crash trilogy, the Spyro trilogy, and the GTA Definitive Edition trilogy. Every one of these, such as Spyro here, claims to be a remaster. All of these are in new engines. They look way nicer and play a little different, but they are the same thing at its core with some new paint slapped on there. If you take an old shirt and put some shiny new buttons on it, it's still the same shirt. It might make it fit a little better, but it doesn't fix that thing where the armpits, just like don't feel right. That whole deal. Kind of like me with blonde hair. I look way cooler, but I'm still the same guy that's too annoying for you to watch past the first 30 seconds of a video. But since I really just hammered that point home, let's just go ahead and jump on over to remakes, because I think the best way to do this is to just dive into both kind of simultaneously. A remake is a game that is supposed to be a retelling of the original game's events, changing story beats, changing levels, events, timelines, and character. For example, Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4 are different from 2, 3, and 4. These take the fixed camera or the tank controlled over the shoulder of Resident Evil 4 and change them into these full 3D, full range of movement, move while shooting games, different maps, different locations, different story beats, extending some sections, shrinking some sections down, but still being the same game. We can even take this to a stupidly more hardcore level with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and whatever the other one is. Is it just Remake? Google what the title is, because if it's Remake, that's ignorant. That's a terrible name to name Rebirth after Remake. Why not Remake Part 2? Very dumb if they did that. I can't believe they did that. That is awful. But regardless, those are different as well. I do need to make it clear, though, we don't want to lump something like DMC or Saints Row into this category. Those are reboots, you full-on stupid idiot. Why would you suggest such an asinine idea? But there are some games that do kind of skirt the line of these categories, and they kind of become their own thing. But that would defeat the whole purpose of this video, so I'm going to force them into a box. Creative expression is dead, and you will be categorized. Just to stay on brand with me, we'll do the recent Tony Hawk remakes. They fall into this strange category for me because they almost feel like sequels. It kind of seats itself into this timeline being based after the games that it is remaking by taking all the pros and aging them up to what they are now, as opposed to keeping them the age they were when the games were originally made. And then also doing all of these map changes and updates. Like, I don't know, I'll use the example I've used in like 12 videos where they make the mall abandoned in 1+2, or where they do the exact same thing in 3+4 and abandon Skater Island, which is an actual skate park that has been shut down since. Another thing that makes this feel like a sequel is that this is a series that very frequently revisits its maps, so I almost wouldn't call it a remake. It definitely feels like a sequel that just revisits all of the same levels in the modern day, 20-something years later. The Resident Evil Chronicles series is marketed as reimaginings for some reason. That's stupid and not a category. These are light gun games, and they are also remakes that tell an abridged version of the story from the original games. And then they just kind of turn the whole thing into this like arcadey light gun shooter. It doesn't really reimagine anything, except for the gameplay. Therefore, this would be a remake because the gameplay is completely different, and also the story is different because there are massive chunks of it missing. The one I had the hardest time with is Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, which falls in such a bizarre category that I can't really pin it down, which once again is my whole goal here. It is essentially a remaster. It is everything that Yellow was, but it looks a little better. The gameplay is still the exact same, except for when you're finding Pokemon in the wild, which is such a big element of the game, but at the same time is the only change that would affect this not being a remaster. I'm in a baffling conundrum here. But because I have to place a verdict, I'm going to classify Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee as a remaster. Feel free to attack me in the comments for that one. And I would say you're wrong, but I genuinely have no idea. And I'm sure I could pick and choose games all night long to call out of what they are and what they could be. But I think I've nailed down the general idea here of what I was going for. If it's the same but it looks better, it's a remaster. If it's different, then it's a remake. And then those other two categories. It's simple enough. Okay, let's please stop interchanging these and slipping these into the update category. These are all different things. Stop doing that. This is the official list. You have to come to this YouTube video every time you want to release a game that could possibly be a remaster. There is also this whole other version of what this video could be just kind of looming back here, where we talk about why there is so many remasters and remakes, why there was such a big boom of 7th gen games being remastered. Is the Switch possibly to blame for that? Most certainly it is, but that's a whole other topic. And also, does it hurt the industry more to have a higher rate of these remasters over sequels? Is it worth their time to make them? And even diving a little deeper into the different kinds of remasters when it comes to something like Halo Anniversary, the first Halo, that kept the entire original version in the game, and you could toggle with a button prompt to make it the new remastered version. What a wild piece of technology we haven't used since. What was that? That was nuts. That was 2 games as one game, and you could toggle between them in seconds. That was what they told us Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart was, and that's certainly not what that game was. But let's take that opposed to something like Mafia Definitive Edition that is just a standard visual and audio upgrade. And maybe we'll come back to that someday. There's a lot of things there, but what I have here is really what my thoughts were on the categorizing issue that we have. That is just what the problem is to me that I wanted to solve today. And now it shouldn't be a problem, because if you don't use this list and you don't know what to label your game as, the only person you have to blame is a YouTube algorithm who didn't show you this video. But it would have had you subscribed and liked and commented and all that nonsense. Go ahead while you're at it, go watch some of those other videos that I did. Maybe you're looking for some less analytical stuff on the games industry and just looking for some real nonsense videos, because I've done a lot of those. One time I ate a red hamburger on this channel. Or you can go watch one of those classics, the ones everybody loves, the Wii Fits, the Tony Hawks. Maybe you can watch a whole old stream, those are in a playlist somewhere. Or go watch a different YouTube channel entirely. Did you know people still watch Markiplier? I had no idea. I was baffled to find that out. But if I didn't say it at the top and I put it in this part, I have been so creatively in a rut for the past month. I have written probably 5 or 6 scripts, and they're just sitting there, and I don't like any of them. This is the one that I thought I should record. So if this one isn't good, that is why. And you may never see it. Let's see. We'll see how it turns out. I think that's all I got. All right. Bye.